Ladies and gentlemen, today's review is on the iconic Concorde. As everybody knows, that Concorde was the supersonic transport aircraft that flew from London to New York as its prime route, which was called the Pink Ribbon route at one point of time too, in 3.5 hours or less, whereas regular aircraft like 747, L-1011, 767s would take at least 7.5 to 8 hours to cover that route. And it was the elite of the elite aircraft. It was technological marvel, the best humankind can ever produce. I know a lot of people have said the same thing for the double-decker A380, but this was way ahead of its time. And A380 is a new kid on the block, but Concorde was designed and built in 1960s, and in 1970s it started flying. So the aircraft has a metallurgy like no other aircraft at the cruising speed of Mach 2 because of the kinetic heat that would generate on the surface of the whole aircraft. The aircraft would expand at least close to a feet long, and then it would contract back when the speed would decrease and the descent would start. The nose of the aircraft, as you can see, is lowered, and it would even get lower for the landings because of the high angle of attack due to the delta wing. It used to come in for landings at higher speeds. Concorde had certain features to itself that no other aircraft had. One of them is the iconic and the engineering marvel, I would say, the ram air intake doors on right underneath where the intakes are. Inside the intakes of the engine, there are ram doors which would come down to slow down the speed of the air going inside the nacelle, because the engines could only take up to 500 kilometers an hour, whereas the aircraft would go at 1350 kilometers an hour at Mach 2. So in order to reduce that, not to let the engine cough out, those doors were designed, and not a lot of people know that about Concorde. And the other thing about this beautiful aircraft is when it used to come in for landing, it used to come at a lower speed than what it would normally, because of the way the leading edge on the outer wings were designed. They had a really sharp leading edge because on a higher angle of attack, that leading edge would slow down the airspeed and let the aircraft come in for a slow speed landing. Also, you can look at the main landing gears. There's a water deflector in front of it to spread the water away from the engines, because the engines were underslung and underneath the wings, so the water could actually go right in it. So in order to do that, they actually put these deflectors on. And on the model, let me zoom it a little bit more for you, that you can actually see the spreader vane in between the nacelle right there, and that spreader vane is on both nacelles, and it's used to split the air into two, so it could go into the separate sections of the engine. In case one engine dies, the other one will keep on going. So there were a lot of things about this aircraft. And the other thing that not a lot of people know is the landing gear. When the landing gear used to retract after taking off, there's an actuator which would actually shrunk the strut itself, so the length of the strut would reduce while it's retracting into the fuselage, in order for it to fit inside the fuselage. And that's one of the features that not too many people know about the Concorde. And recently the Boeing used a similar feature on their 737, 9 and 10 Maxes to increase the length of the landing gear strut because of the bigger engines that they put on those airplanes. What you're looking at here is a Pepsi livery. This was done in mid-90s on the Air France's aircraft BTSD, and the reason why it was done, because Pepsi wanted to introduce their new blue at that time, and in order to do that, they wanted to get the global attention, so they needed something very, very special. And they looked around and they talked to Air France, and they struck a deal with Air France to use one of their Concordes, and this special livery was painted on this aircraft, and this aircraft flew across Europe into the Middle East with the supermodels of the time, which were Claudia Schiffer and a few others. And the whole project lasted for I think 2 weeks, and after the 2 weeks aircraft was returned to Air France and it was repainted in the regular Air France livery. This particular aircraft is now preserved in Paris, and you can actually go and visit it, because one of those prototypes, very first prototypes, I think it was 001, which is also in Paris, and both of these aircrafts are preserved together in a very nicely purposely built hangar. And even for the longest time the nose used to droop on the BTSD, but I don't know if they still do that or not, and I believe even the flight control surfaces used to move up and down. So they kept some of those systems functioning on the BTSD for the very long time. On the other hand, if you look on my left, I'll show you there's another Concorde that I have. That Concorde is in the color scheme of American Airlines, as you can see now. A lot of people think that this is a fantasy livery, and because Concorde never wore American Airlines, but in reality, when a lot of airlines ordered Concorde back in late 60s, mid 60s, when it was being produced, there were about 18 airlines that ordered 100 or 102 Concordes. Out of them, American Airlines also ordered 60. Back then, Astrojet livery was being used on their aircraft. So I'll share with you some images, and you will see Concorde in that livery. But by the time Concorde would have got the delivery, if the orders would have gone through, they would be wearing this color scheme. So in a way, a lot of people think this is a fantasy livery, but if the reality would have happened, this would be the livery the Concorde would have been wearing for American Airlines. American Airlines also ordered Boeing's SST, which was 2707, but unfortunately that aircraft never materialized and it was never built. So, and then in early 70s, due to the fuel cost, and there was some oil urgency going on around the world, the fuel cost was risen, and a lot of airlines, actually most of the airlines, canceled their Concorde orders because the economics didn't make any sense at that time for those airlines, and only Air France and British Airways ended up with 14 aircraft, 7 each, and they flew the airplane for 27 years. And British Airways made a lot of profit because of their marketing strategy in the early 80s, whereas Air France just kind of dragged their feet and never really made much money out of Concorde. And when the incident happened in Gunis in 2000, tell you the truth, it was the Air France who didn't want to fly the Concorde anymore, and they purposely manipulated a lot of things behind the doors, a lot of numbers, and forged the numbers and gave that to the Airbus, and Airbus revoked the airworthiness certificate of the type. That's why British Airways couldn't fly there, because it was a joint program, and both airlines used to buy parts and order parts together, and both airlines were supporting the program. And when Air France backed out, British Airways could not sustain the project, whereas they were given the option, okay, you want to fly your fleet, go ahead, but then you're gonna have to pay the price for the Air France. And it just didn't make sense, because after the Gunis crash, British Airways, I believe, spent about 40 to 50 million per aircraft, but they modified it not just with the Kevlar blankets, but the whole interior was changed, the tires were changed, new Michelin X tires were made for it, for the Concorde, and were put onto it, and there was some structural modifications that were done on the British Airways aircraft, whereas Air France didn't do all of those, and they just didn't want the airplane anymore, and they were finding a way to do it, to retire it, and that's how they ended up getting their taking their hands off, washing their hands off from this iconic aircraft. Now, I've learned all of this by doing the research, and there is an article out there which is called Betrayal of Concorde, and if you see that article, you will understand how the whole thing happened, why Air France was so eager to get rid of the Concordes, just because there were a lot of crashes back in the 80s and 90s that are happening with Air France due to their maintenance issues and other factors, and the CEO of that time was just hoping that Concorde wouldn't crash, because Concorde was the flagship. And then in June of 2000, unfortunately, Air France Concorde BTSC crashed in Gunis after taking off from Paris's Charles de Gaulle aircraft, and that whole incident started sealing the fate of this beautiful aircraft. That was the beginning of the end of the Concorde, but then Concorde was brought back into the service. It flew, and then 9/11 happened, and that just killed the aviation industry at that time, and Concorde was retired in 2003. Now let's going back to the model. These models are highly detailed model, and if you look at the landing gears, I'll show you the close-ups of the landing gear. They are very much done replicating the actual landing gear of the aircraft. Very nice job done by JC Wings on both nose landing gears and as well as the main landing gears. And other thing that I want to talk to you about is the wing. I mean, I'm just trying to see if I can show you the side profile of the wing. The aerofoil on these models is pretty accurate because the root aerofoil is a very special airfoil. It's not NACI, it's not SLEG, it's a different airfoil that British Aerospace and Aerospatiale designed it, and the airfoils change from the root to the tip. And if you look at it, it's flat on the top here on the middle of the aircraft, then it goes up and then curves down at the leading edge of the root airfoil, like right where it's joining the wing. And that is something very different, and it all makes sense if you think about how this aircraft performs. Then the wings have anhedral on it right from the beginning. They don't have dihedral. They have anhedral just like the Antonov in the back, which helps gain more lift. And then the wing would twist. The geometry of wing is like this. It's on a high angle of attack on the root, but on the tip it's on a negative angle. And if I remember correctly, this is about 13 or 14 degrees of the washout on the full-scale aircraft, and the wing twists. When I was building my 14-scale giant model of the Concorde for flying as a radio control model, I did a lot of research on this aircraft, and I learned so much about this aircraft that I believe I know about this aircraft more than a lot of people would. I mean, when you do such a big projects, you do a lot of research. Then if you go to the front of the airplane, look at the nose. Right now it's at 5 degrees down. That's for the taxiing and takeoff configuration. And you can see the visor is gone down inside the nose, versus if I turn it around, when the nose is fully up in aerodynamic position, the visor is sticking out of the nose and touching the top of the fuselage, just like on the American Airlines Concorde. So both of these features are very, very accurate. Even the arc is very accurate. There's a fairing of the nose piece that goes in, which is called a tongue, and that tongue is just the way it's on the full-scale aircraft, and they have these strakes. I mean, JC Wing just did the amazing job on this model. Even the antennas, the landing gear doors, they are very accurate. The doors, you can see static ports right there underneath the L1 door. I mean, it's just beautiful. The models are very, very detailed. The wings, let me show you on the top. The wings have these doors on them, which are the access doors where the main landing gear is. And when the aircraft was being raised to go into the museums, they would open these doors, and the crane would actually lift the airplane right from its hard points. So that's where those hard points are. Then going back to the model, let me show you the thrust reversers. Now if I turn this around, you can see the way they designed it, the thrust reversers buckets would close like that, and you can have them in open configuration also. So this is very neat. Like, when you push it with your finger like that, you can open it in a full open position, and then if you want to display your model with the thrust reversers bucket closed, you can actually close them. And these thrust reversers were also engineering marvel, because they're only designed for Concorde and no other aircraft. As I was mentioning about the anhedral, you can see the whole anhedral of the wing right from the root to the tip. You can see how it's drooping down. So the geometry of the wing of the Concorde is very, very complicated, and it took me months to understand this geometry when I was doing my radio control model of the Concorde. Now if I look at this landing gear in the back, which is a tail bumper gear, that's also very accurate. The JC Wing did a very nice job and I'm really happy with it. So as these fairings on the left side, the fairing is longer on the tail, and it's connecting to the actuator of the lower rudder. On the right, if I turn it around, and you can see the fairing on the American Airlines, it's on the upper part of the rudder. So the Concorde have two sections, top rudder and bottom rudder, and both are actuated by mechanical arms inside, and there's hydraulic actuators, and the fairings goes on them. Plus each aircraft has a strake on top of the fin too, which you can see above the American Eagle markings. And if I turn it around for the Air France, you can see it right there. The shape of the fin is very accurate. I mean, like and also there's a bit of a area where it goes down and comes up where the tail cone is on the full scale Concorde, and I see that built on this model, as well as if you look closely, behind the rudder, the fairing comes up and curves down from the top while it's coming up from the bottom, and that's exactly how it's on the full scale aircraft. And they also imitated with the landing light, strobe light in the back of the tail cone. So beautiful models. I'm gonna move this around and I'll show you the underneath of the American Airlines Concorde. Show you the detail. Now you guys can see the detail on this particular model. I'll move my camera back a little bit, and you can see the landing gear doors. You can see the refueling panels are right there. You can also see all the access panels for different access areas underneath the nose and underneath the forward fuselage. And you can also see these black markings underneath the leading edges, so as on the nacelles, and on the leading edge where the ram doors are on the nacelles, and as well as in the center of the nacelles, and plus other detail. You can also see SNCMA decal, and I'll turn my light around, and you can see that now. Hopefully, there you go. You can see that it's there too. So I mean, you can see the actuator fairings on the bottom of the wing. So JC Wing, you guys did amazing job on these models. I'm very proud of you, and very happy that I got a chance to do the review on this model for the guys, and I have to give 10 out of 10 to you guys for developing these models. And if you look at the landing gears closely, I'm just trying to show you that there are two actuators. There's one that folds the strut, and then there's another one on top. Now that's the one that pulls the strut. When the strut is retracting into the fuselage, it actually shrinks the strut, and that second one, the upper one, the small actuator, is for that, and the lower is to bring the gear up itself, the strut. So there you go, guys. I hope you guys like this review. It took me a while to do it, and but it's here now for you guys. You can see the beautiful boxes of American Airlines Concorde, as well as the Pepsi Concorde. So thumbs up, JC Wings. You guys did amazing job on it, and I hope you guys like this review. And I know you guys are waiting for the Antonov 225's review. It will be up soon, but for now, enjoy this one. Take care. Bye bye.